Hello, hello, and welcome back to Transforming Trauma with Dr. Triphi. I am very glad you're here. So, last week we talked a little bit about grief, and this week I want us to continue with the grief topic. I want to talk about complicated grief tonight, and I think as in grief, is complex, tender, and often misunderstood. I think, particularly given what we have collectively experienced over the past week, that the topic is fitting. I am Dr. Triphi. I'm a psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia. And on Thursdays, I show up to talk about psychology and to teach skills and strategies and tips to help us think better so we can feel better and we can do better. Okay, so I want to share something with you. Last weekend felt very heavy for me emotionally. And I know that it was particularly loaded. It was extra loaded because I myself was living through a grief anniversary. So I think some of what happened um, contributed to that feeling of heaviness. So, what did I do? Let me show you what I did last weekend. This is a sound bowl, a healing sound bowl that I use myself. But who heals the healer, right? I think that people who offer care and healing to other people need to take time and create opportunities and space for them to heal themselves. So I went to a healing sound bath. I went to a sound bath and the room was full of people on their mats. And the sound practitioner, she was so good. She was so good. The experience was so positive that I am sure I will be back. I am sure I will be back. So, this is a healing sound bowl. If you ever hear of a sound bath experience close to you, please take advantage. Take advantage. Okay, so tonight I want to talk about complicated grief because I think after the experience last week of watching the young man lose his life on TV, essentially live, um, many people had access to the video or saw the video. I think that collectively we're experiencing some of that. And complicated grief is not the normal, well, I'll say not, let me rephrase from normal, not the typical kind of grief that softens with time or that always makes sense. Yeah. This is the kind of grief that gnaws at you and claws at you. It lingers, it's tangled up, it's confusing sometimes, and it can really wrap itself around your day-to-day life. This is the kind of grief that resurfaces mhm, just when you might have thought you made peace with it. So before we dive in, what I want to invite you to do today is to just take a nice deep breath in through your nose, maybe out through your mouth. Just kind of center yourself, pause, ground yourself, yes, situate yourself. I just used the sound to help me ground myself and situate myself. And I want to invite you to think about a loss in your life. I want to invite you to think about a loss in your life. It could be the loss of a person, it could be the loss of a relationship, it could be the loss of a season of your life. What do I mean by that? I mean, many of us grieve or feel sadness about our younger selves, uh, situations that happened when we were younger. And some of us have a hard time moving forward from those experiences. It could be even, therefore, a version of yourself that you are grieving or mourning. So maybe the self I was before I experienced a traumatic event, or the self I was before I got into a very painful relationship, how I used to be before I got sick. Okay? So, my encouragement to you is to hold that gently, gently, as we walk through this conversation together. Last time I did this, I shared my personal experience with grief because it was a death anniversary for me of my mother. And that experience is permanently stamped on my heart, September 10, 1991. And it so happened that the following day, basically, collectively, we experienced a very, uh, it was a traumatic event. It was a traumatic event. So, in my situation, as I explained last time, my mother, along with 7 other people, drowned on a boat, and their bodies were never recovered. So there was not a funeral rite. There was not a funeral rite as is typical, as is usual. There was no final goodbye. It was difficult to get closure. And with that absence came a feeling of uncertainty. And that was my experience of complicated grief. Because in many ways, and particularly because I was younger, I didn't have clear language or words to describe always what I was feeling as I was trying to make sense of the loss. So, remember, my encouragement to you tonight is to think about a time when you did not get closure. Think about a time when you did not get closure. Maybe, again, it was about the sudden end of a relationship, or one of your loved ones or somebody you cared about went too soon. How did that affect your ability to move forward? And as you think about that, just notice what stirs up in your body as you remember. So let's define complicated grief a little more. Complicated grief happens when the natural process of grieving and mourning gets stuck. So instead of adapting, yeah, and gradually finding a new rhythm, a new pace of living life without your person or without the experience that you're grieving or mourning, the pain becomes chronic. And it can show up as long lasting, intense yearning for the person or experience. When I say that, I mean something like if you were a homeowner, you saved up, you worked hard and you saved up for your first house, and life happened and you lost your house. Some of us are still grieving these things, okay? You might have an inability or a lot of challenges accepting that loss. There might be guilt, there might be anger, there might be confusion that does not seem to fade, or you might have intrusive memories. You might not be wanting to think about the painful event, but the thoughts come and they seem to be overshadowing what's happening right now, like your good events that are happening right now. So I want to encourage you to think of grief like a river. Where does a river go? Rivers typically end in the sea, right? They start. I'm originally from Dominica in the Caribbean, so you hear how I speak. And we're a little island, not to be confused with the Dominican Republic. We're between Guadeloupe and Martinique. But Dominica is an island of 365 rivers. And rivers, they start up in the mountains and they end in the sea. So think of grief like a river. And normally it's flowing down, sometimes slow, sometimes it's rushing, it's wild, but it's always moving. It's always moving. Normal, typical grief is always moving. Complicated grief, not so much. So, complicated grief is like when perhaps you have a rock that stops the water from going down, or the water starts pooling up, gathering up, or it just floods, it overflows the banks of the river, and the normal flow is interrupted. So it ends up going to places where you might say it really doesn't belong. So it's not following its natural flow, its natural track. If grief is a river, if grief is a river, where do you feel yours right now? If you were to visualize your grief over whatever event that came up for you, hmm, if you were to visualize it as a river, what's happening with that grief right now? Is it flowing, which is what needs to happen? Is it flooding? Is it overflowing its banks? Or does it feel stuck and it's just pooling up? It's just damming up. It's just the water's rising. The water is rising. And if you can, perhaps you can write that down, jot it down, get a journal, get a book, get your note section in your phone, and jot down a sentence or two. All right. So, a few more examples of what that might look like. Imagine the world, our world today, watching a public figure lose his life. Very popular, right? Of course, some people are going to be grieving sincerely, but others are clearly feeling conflicted. Still, other people might be in shock, but others might be in judgment. Hmm? So that's a whole swirl of emotions, a lot of big, big, big feelings. That's an example of potential complicated grief on a mass scale, on a huge scale. Complicated grief. It is not simple, it is not easy. Very big feelings, very polarized emotions, and people are saying many things from many different perspectives. I spoke with a teenager once. I was doing a psychological evaluation with a teenager once who was talking to me about his mom losing his mother. And he was uh, almost an adult, but he recalled losing his mother, but feeling kind of mixed. He said, I miss my mom. I miss my mom a lot. But it's confusing to me because sometimes I don't miss her. Why? Because his mother was an abusive mother. An abusive mother in the sense that mom would do things as horrendous as burning him with cigarettes, as punishing him very severely, as denying food. Okay? So, how do you grieve someone? How do you grieve someone who hurt you so deeply, even though you love them so much? So that push and that pull, that tug of love and anger and confusion and rage and shame sometimes and guilt. What is that if you're grieving? It's complicated grief. If you have an ambiguous loss like my own story, where your loved one's body is never found and you're not able to complete the normal, typical processes of grief, the normal rites of grief, yeah, a funeral. Uh, the family, we had a memorial service, but that's different because then there's no body to bury or cremate and to return to, which is what is the typical uh, process. So that made the closure experience more complicated, more complicated. So if the loss is ambiguous and it's unclear and you have an unsolved mystery, that could lend itself towards complicated grief. So question for you, another question for you. Have you ever felt torn? Have you ever felt that kind of feeling where you're torn between both missing someone but feeling relief that they're gone? You're torn. You feel relieved that they're gone, but you miss them. Or you might feel guilty that you feel relieved that they're gone. You want to think about what emotions that experience is stirring up for you. And you want to consider, can I allow both of these emotions or all of these emotions in my body, in my system, simultaneously without judging myself? As in, to just accept that this is what I'm experiencing right now, and this is what I'm experiencing right now. And to have compassion, perhaps, for myself as I'm experiencing whatever is coming up for me. Yeah. So, why does grief get complicated? Again, grief might get complicated of the relationship, because of the relationship. When you have love coexisting with harm, when you have love coexisting with pain, when you have love coexisting with confusion, when you have love coexisting with what you might have interpreted as very negative things, you're at risk of complicated grief if you lose that person. Sometimes it's the particular experience itself, sometimes it's the death itself. If death, if the loss is very sudden and you did not have time to plan or prepare, if it's violent, yeah, or if it's ambiguous, like say if it's a suicide and the family, loved ones didn't have a note, didn't see it coming, yeah, or if you have an accident, if the people who passed were very young, sometimes it's the death itself that leaves many more questions than there are answers. And sometimes it's the social layers or the cultural layers associated with that loss. So, within the past week, as a collective, we also learned that in Mississippi, two young bodies were found hanging from trees. Now, young bodies where the community is being told young men, two, not one, two, committed suicide by hanging themselves from trees. Mm, that does what, do you think? That clearly, given the history, is going to awaken some memories of past trauma for many people. Okay, so that's another situation. And then you have collective grief like 9/11. Last week was very loaded, was it not? 9/11, where everybody witnesses so much pain and so many people experience so much pain and so much loss. That kind of pain reverberates and it lasts, takes a long time for many people to find closure and healing. Today is September 17th. And right about now, at this time of day, right about now in 2017, on my original island of Dominica, islanders were gearing up and right about now, really starting to get really heavy winds of Category 5 Hurricane Maria. That almost obliterated the country. That when CNN came, they said it looked like a war zone. So you have these collective grief experiences. You have mass shootings. You have children sitting in class learning their ABCs, getting annihilated. Yeah. And so our individual pain becomes magnified by the suffering around us. Yeah, heavy stuff, I know, but real life stuff. So tonight, I want to invite you again to pause and ask yourself, perhaps, Whose grief am I carrying? Is the grief I'm feeling even mine? As I process all of these life events that are coming at us really fast, whose grief am I carrying? What is this grief feeling about? Am I holding pain that belongs to me, my family, my ancestors, my community? Is this pain my mother's pain? Is this pain my father's pain? Is it my pain? Is it my grief? Again, grief ripples, the effects ripple. Think of it like throwing a rock into a pool of water and watching the ripples extend outward. If one family loses one member of the family, that member of the family might have been the primary breadwinner of the family. What happens to the family? Their medical care might get lost, money is lost, social support is lost. It's not just, yeah, the person passes away. The family loses so much. What about the community? What about the church? What about the country? What about the work that person did? Maybe that person was particularly skilled in an area. So the ripple effect is big when we have losses. On a collective level, many of us, as last week happened, have been mentioning George Floyd. Yeah, because those memories are coming up again for many people. So even if it wasn't personal, as in this was not my loved one, my brother, my uncle, my friend, we felt the collective ache. And so I think many people are feeling that collective ache, but also many people are feeling the ambiguity and the confusion that they're having so many different, very strong emotions in response to what's happened. On your own individual level, grief might be looking for you like a miscarriage that nobody knows anything about, or an abortion that you felt you had to do, that you've not been able to release, a missing person. These kinds of experiences lend themselves to some of us getting stuck and that river of grief losing its flow and getting stuck or flooding or overflowing the banks. And it deserves recognition, it deserves attention. It deserves recognition, it deserves attention. So, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? Uh, I'm referencing the events of last week. What came up for you? Think of that event and process it. Like, really think about it. What came up for you? Did it remind you of any other situation? Did it echo a personal experience for you? And what can you do about it? Uh, I will say this, that healing is not about getting over. Healing is not about getting over things. Healing to me is more about getting through things. Healing is more about getting through things. And healing from grief is about learning how to experience the grief, but you almost have a parallel process going on where you're living life. Because the task, the primary task, is learning to live with and without. Learning to live with every memory, every experience, every positive, and without the person, and without the thing, and without the house that you worked so hard for, that you lost to foreclosure. Yeah. All of those big emotions we talked about earlier, they might not always be love emotions. So healing is about learning how to put all of that into context, how to bring all of that into a place of acceptance. This is what I'm feeling. Name it, say it. Naming it reduces the shame. I think this past week, a lot of people were either trying to shame others that they were having particular emotional experiences in response to the traumatic event, or they were experiencing shame. So you've seen shaming things done to people who've expressed their feelings. People have lost their jobs. They've lost friends. I saw many people on social media saying, based on your emotional response and the words you're using to describe this event, I no longer want to be your friend. Yeah. But again, complicated grief is about learning how to hold all of it. Yeah, it's about learning how to hold all of it because we're human beings. And so, if grief recovery, because the grief experience is separate from the recovery experience. Grief is about all of the emotions you're feeling. Yeah. But recovery is the process of restoration, of coming back into balance and hopefully uh, attaining some level of, we hope, deeper understanding of ourselves and deeper understanding about life, and gaining some kind of meaning from it. Or even if we can't get to some place of meaning about it, at least just being able to tolerate these experiences that come with being alive. Okay. So seeking support is a big deal. Very crucial, very important. Seeking support. And I say seeking because we have to go looking for it. We have to go looking for it. I saw one of my friends um, who experienced a recent loss was asking for support, asking for support. And that was such a bold and courageous move because we don't always feel safe, I think, especially these days, or comfortable asking for support. But asking for support, asking for help is a life skill. It's a symptom, a symbol, a sign of emotional intelligence. Because what could happen if I don't ask for help is what? I could lose my life. I could lose my life. Imagine losing my life because I didn't want to ask for help. You know, some of us do that. And so it's a sign of emotional maturity to ask for help. Therapy, hypnotherapy, grief support groups, talking with people who understand, talking with other people who understand, who seem to at least accept your emotions without shaming you or attempting to shame you, because that's important. And uh, I am encouraging you to stay away from people who have very strong opinions, the opposite direction for now. For now, if you're feeling raw and tender, stay away from people who are experiencing this huge event in a very different way than you are, because it's not going to help you. Not yet. It's not going to help you yet. Yeah. It might hurt you more than it'll help you right now. But I would say don't try to untangle grief alone. Don't try to untangle grief alone, because social support is one of the most powerful healing agents during recovery. Because you're feeling so emotionally put upon and distressed and weaker, your emotional resources are being used up. You know, you're worn out on many levels. Yeah, we need people to prop us up. during those times. I would say that when closure is difficult, as in those ambiguous situations of loss, you have cold cases. I work in a prison setting. There are people who might say to you, well, there are things I've done, but I never talked about it, but it's on my conscience. Yeah. So there are many situations where you've lost people and you've lost things, but there are no answers. Yeah. So you might need to create closure experiences for yourself. For yourself. I mentioned earlier that there was not a funeral. There couldn't be a funeral rite. And growing up Catholic, that's a big deal. That's part of the sacraments. It's one of the sacraments, which is, developmental, if you think about it from that perspective. You have your baptism, you have first communion, you have confirmation, you have matrimony, you have the funeral rite. And missing that experience, it does feel like a hole. So you have a responsibility then to try to create closure experiences. So a memorial service, yeah, lighting candles, performing a ritual, maybe holding a service for your person on their anniversary or their birthday, doing special things, writing letters to your person, even if you know they will never get it, creating like a scrapbook, yeah, creating a scrapbook or a photo album of your person, traveling, visiting meaningful places, places where you and the person that you lost shared deep affection for, or there was something meaningful about that place for the two of you. Those things help. Those things help. Creating rituals, even if there was not a burial site, maybe there could be a memorial site or a monument placed where you do have a place to go. And that can be like a big stop, a big stop. Yeah. Also, I think balancing. So it's that parallel journey while you're grieving and feeling all the feelings that show up, whatever they are, without judgment, but that you're naming and describing, making space for joy. Yeah, as your life continues, making space for new things, making space for joy, making space for new things. I will say that many people will experience guilt when they start feeling happy again. But I need you to understand that that is part of the process. It's just part of the healing process. And if you're working from a perspective of compassion, compassion must begin with yourself. Okay? Using body based healing, these are called somatic healing practices. Soma for body. We store grief in the body. We store grief in the body. We store grief in our body. Some of us, we store it in physical pain in the body. Some of us, we have tightness of the chest, of the stomach, pain in your shoulders, pain in your neck, headaches, stomach aches, and like I said, physical pain in your body. So you want to do practices like breath work. You want to go to healing sound baths and have somebody else minister to you. You want to take advantage of practices like Reiki. Reiki is a hands-on healing process where the person might not even have to touch your body, but can be a very gentle restorative process. You want to use practices like EMDR. EMDR is eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing. It's an evidence-based modality to help us regulate, really balance both sides of the brain, bring us back into balance. Yeah. Mindfulness is another good practice. Meditation, prayer, all of these help us to shift grief out of the body. Stretching, yoga, what do you call them? Massage Envy. If you're in the US, Massage Envy and many other places have these stretch exercises that they can do. I have many clients who say, I don't know about yoga. I think people have their own religious beliefs and they have their own understanding about things, which I don't judge. It's not my place. Everybody has a right to their thoughts and their feelings. So not everybody says, yes, I want to do yoga, although yoga is proven scientifically to be one of the most efficient ways to bring your body, your mind, and your spirit into balance. Very, very potent. But if you don't want to do that, you can go and have somebody stretch your body out, like they would stretch an athlete's body out. So there are ways to get body healing. Massage is another way. If you don't want to do a full body massage, you can go have somebody rub your feet. You can have a loved one rub your feet, rub your back. Yeah, rub your hands. I mean, you go to the nail tech and they give you a little massage in your hands afterwards, and you woosa, right? So these are ways we can heal the body and move some of that grief that can turn to physical pain out of the body. Okay, so I want to invite you again, as I did from the beginning. I want to invite you to take a few seconds when you come upon this video, yeah, and you've come to this part of the video, to pause for a second, yeah. Perhaps you place a hand on your heart, perhaps you place a hand on your stomach, and if you want to, perhaps you take a nice deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Take a few of those nice, long, slow, deep breaths. And perhaps you whisper to yourself, I am here. I am here. I am here. I am still here. And that thought, when you're grieving and recovering, can feel very frustrating because you want to be here with your loved one. But if we're practicing compassion and if we're practicing acceptance more and more, that kind of statement becomes easier to hold. It becomes easier to hold. It becomes easier to hold in your body, in your mind, and in your spirit. So, if you're the one going through grief, if you're the one having many other thoughts come up for you as a result of these events of the past week, I want to encourage you to do something about it. If you're finding that you're thinking about a loved one that you lost a lot, write them a letter. Even if they hurt you, even if they hurt you, don't censor it. Just write what comes. And then maybe you can decide, will I keep it? Will I burn it? Will I flush it down the toilet? Will I release it in some way that feels right for me? Yeah. But I suppose I want you to know and want you to remember, as somebody who I became an unwilling expert of grief at 21. Yeah. That grief is sometimes complicated. or perhaps all the time complicated, because life is complicated. That was my biggest lesson in recovery, understanding that this is life and that I was special. I'm a special person, but I am not special, in that all of us will experience loss and grief if we live long enough. Yeah. And that love is complicated and that it feels great, but all of us will lose it at some point, one way or the other, because nobody gets out of here alive. Nobody's getting out of here alive. So, as much as you have it right now, I'm sorry, you're going to lose it, or they're going to lose your love because you might leave before them. So, what does that mean? That means we have a responsibility to heal and to do what we need to do to heal and recover. Hmm? And that healing means that we won't always feel as if we can't breathe another breath. Yeah, that with time and intervention, where the grief is here, but your life and your new life that continues with the memories and the reality of the experiences that you shared with your person and without them. Hmm? This new life that you create, where you begin to learn new things and experience new things and do new things without them while you feel the pain. Yeah, that simultaneous process. Uh, eventually, we hope. Eventually, we hope that we come back to ourselves, to feeling our footing again, feeling balanced and grounded, but again, hopefully attaining some level of positive outcome. Positive outcome, as in, I learned this about myself. This hurt so much, but I learned I can ask for help. This hurt so much, but I realized I had so many friends and people who loved me, who were willing to show up for me. This hurt so much, but I'm so grateful that I had this person's love, affection, time, attention. And I had that experience in my life. This hurt so much, but I'm grateful that this person who was not the best mother gave me the opportunity to experience life. Whatever meaning you make out of the experience, hopefully you come out stronger, better, wiser. So grief is not just about death. It's about love, and it's about memory, and it's about identity. It's about community. So my invitation again is, if your grief feels stuck or complicated tonight, please don't just suffer in silence. Reach out for help. Create rituals for yourself. Rewrite the story. Rewrite the story. Write a new story. Yeah. Healing doesn't erase our pain, but it does create space for us to continue living. It creates space for us to continue living. So if what I've talked about resonated with you today, leave a little message in the chat. Uh, journal privately. Journal privately. Don't just hold it inside. Okay. Next week, we continue transforming trauma with Dr. Triphi. And I want to encourage you to continue to heal and feel. I am inviting Noreen Fahey to Transforming Trauma with me. She is the creator of Save Our Sisters Facebook group and Save Our Sisters Unplugged podcast. She wrote a new book, and it's about the bonds of sisterhood, a guide to building your tribe. I want to hear her story. I want to hear her process. I want to hear who she wants this book to inspire. And she has graciously said yes to joining me next Thursday at this time. In the meantime, As you look for her book on Amazon, my baby girl published her book, her coloring book called Unicorn Quotes coloring book. You can find my books on Amazon as well. Powerball. What a Powerball? Powerball are parables and wise sayings and proverbs in Creole language from Dominica, my original island, that they hold the secrets of psychology, really, that our elders used to help them think better and feel better and do better. And I have a collection of some of those, and I translate it and I give a nice reflection and ask you and invite you in the book to use it and apply it in your present life. I also have a book called Do It Now 7 Steps to Fix Bad Habits that try to get in the way of your success. I teach a lot of strategies in there. I've got a workbook also that goes with the book where you can learn evidence based strategies to help you think better and feel better and do better. All right, y'all. So happy Thursday. I will see you next week. I hope you have a lovely, lovely, lovely rest of your night. Peace.